Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers, or whatever time it is when you're watching this episode. Today I have Jay Deppeler with me, and I'm so happy he is here. He works with Imperium, and we're going to learn about Imperium and a lot about Jay on this podcast today. Jay, welcome to Opening Pathways.
Hello, Tom. Nice to see you again, and hello to everybody that's out there listening.
Yes, yes. So tell me this. I want to know a little bit about Imperium and you, but I really want to know what sparked your idea to start Imperium and get involved in it.
So my life is filled with serendipity and twists and turns that have yielded good outcomes, and just kind of following along the way. Uh, when I got into the field of health and human services, it was through an internship in college where I worked with kids in the juvenile justice system, kids that were in a residential treatment facility, and ultimately, as I progressed in my education, I got a master's degree in counseling and human services, ended up working as a clinician and rising through the ranks of an organization that's a nonprofit, working with kids in the behavioral health, juvenile justice, and child welfare space, and ultimately became the president and CEO of that behavioral health program called Edison Court in southeastern Pennsylvania, and began to kind of confront the rigors of the day-to-day business that we were running. In fact, it's hard sometimes for people to think of nonprofits as businesses, but in fact they are. And we were facing some headwinds at the time. And in 2016, we were looking for a partner to help scale what we were doing as an organization. We were approached by Imperium, which was founded in Reading, Pennsylvania by Ryan Dewey Smith in 2016. And he approached us with this notion of affiliation, which is distinct from mergers and or acquisitions because it allows for the maintenance of the organization's identity and 501c3. And it's something I had never heard of before, something I had never contemplated. I thought more of mergers or acquisitions, and frankly, was not too keen on them because of how they effectively amalgamate an organization and kind of dilute its identity. And so we were very intrigued by this idea. Ryan is a super visionary guy. And in 2017, we affiliated as Edison Court affiliated. And then fast forward 9 years later, growing from about a $30 million at total gross revenue organization to now combined $1 billion of total gross revenue operating in 24 states. I think we've proven that this concept has legs and could deepen and broaden the impact of individual entities across the United States. And that's now what I do for a living, working with Imperium, identifying businesses and organizations that could benefit from affiliation with us.
Amazing story. Tell me this. When was the moment that made you say, this is my path?
The moment where I realized that as our fees, as our reimbursement schedules are changing from program funded to fee for service to managed care, and we could achieve scale simply by becoming an affiliate and consequently reduce our back office costs by joining this network. It was an aha moment for me, certainly for our board, and that's when we knew we needed to make this leap and see how we can help sustain and endure our mission.
Great story. How have you changed since you've been with Imperium? What's happened to Jay along this journey?
Yeah, I started my career, as I noted, working directly with primarily kids initially through the juvenile justice child welfare system. I'm a clinician by training and background, and I always enjoyed that work. I enjoyed seeing people grow through the trials and tribulations we all face throughout our lives. And in many ways, I think what's changed for me is now, rather than working with the individual, I'm working with entities that oftentimes are facing uncertainty and difficulties in their path forward. And so kind of it's the macrocosm of the microcosm that I was working in that individual clinician role. Certainly, my worldview has changed because it's much broader than it used to be. Working with an individual, now we're talking about an organization that's nationwide, and recognizing though that this model is also beneficial because it helps. Not every community is the same, right? So there's no one solution for communities around the nation. So I have the opportunity and the luxury really of meeting different boards, different leaders in different communities, and really learning the idiosyncrasies of those communities and figuring out how to help them is really a real joy for me in the work that I do on a daily basis.
Well, so I've learned, and I knew it to be true anyway, but I've learned on this podcast that there's someone early in our lives that planted some seeds about who we became in our work today. Who was that for you?
Well, an early mentor of mine was a guy named Dr. Don Tangura. Back at when I first began my work at the company that became Edison Court. That company was a company called Middle Earth Incorporated, founded in, as you might guess, in the early 70s by Tolkien fans who frankly were hippies and really wanted to help the struggling kids in the Bucks County community. So the area in which I live, southeastern Pennsylvania, Bucks County, just west of Philadelphia. And they started an alternative school for kids and diversified the work under Don's tutelage and guidance. Don started his career as a probation officer, went on to get his PhD from the University of Delaware, and really inspired taking a different look at the work that we were doing by understanding it from a more methodologically and qualitatively focused lens, looking at outcomes, and really understanding the opportunity we had with those youth to transform their lives in a way that would be enduring not only for them but for their families and the communities to which they invariably returned. And I think that's a part of the equation that sometimes is missed, frankly, in the juvenile justice system, is that you have a real opportunity when these kids are with you to do something therapeutically beneficial for them. These kids just don't come to the juvenile justice system because they're inherently bad. They come to the juvenile justice system because they have experientially negative circumstances in in their lives that create a trauma for them that ultimately gets expressed in a way we just don't necessarily accept societally. And so we have a unique opportunity to intervene in their lives in an incredibly impactful way. And Don really was an inspiration around that because that was always his focus on a daily basis. Like, how are we going to help these kids? Not, he was always, he frequently used the phrase that he abhorred, by the way, trail them, nail them, and jail them, which was the typical probation officers worldview. It was more about identifying how we can create a treatment plan that will have an enduring outcome beneficial to the client.
Yeah, love all this work. I think that I'm involved in youth and some of the work that I do. I think it's critically important to never forget that whatever's going on with our youth for today, they are our future. Tell me this, Jay, what personal values have guided you from the start, and which one has deepened recently?
I think openness and candor are incredibly important, and it's easy to pull punches sometimes when you're going to be sharing uncomfortable feedback with people. But I've always clung to the notion that being honest is essential in deepening relationships, and I think that figuring out how to deliver a message that is at times difficult, but still direct and to the point. There's a real art to that to help people understand, and art, frankly, that I think I was able to develop through my work as a clinician over the years, because a lot of the circumstances that these kids would come to us with, they were negative, and you had to provide negative feedback in a way that was not stymieing, but allowed for someone to explore what that meant for them. I also, what I always was grateful to those kids for was what they gave me, which was the inspiration to be resilient, because some of these kids face circumstances that are unfathomable to many of us, and yet they came to treatment or education every day, continuing to look forward. So I always found that resiliency something that was an inspiration.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. So tell me this, where has life asked Jay to slow down recently?
That's a good question. I think on focusing less on work and more on family. I'm blessed to have a 6-year-old son, and he frequently reminds me of first. It had happened this morning. First thing I do when I get up, it's usually around 6 in the morning, and I wake him up and I bring him downstairs, and he asks if I can read him a book. And typically, my answer will be first, I got to check my emails because I think working from home has inexorably changed all of our lives. It's convenient but inconvenient all at once. Like my days start earlier and end later because I can get up and fold laundry after a meeting, but I still can come back. I have to figure out how to be a bit more well bounded with that. And so I've been more intentional about when he asks things like, read me a book, about saying, you know what, my emails can wait because there's
Yeah,
this opportunity is not going to be, you know, when in 10 years, when he's 16, he's not going to ask me to read him a book. He's going to
no,
ask me to go pound sand probably. So I really want to enjoy these moments and slow down and focus on those relationships, the relationships with my wife, relationships with family. Those are all, obviously of the highest priority, but it's easy sometimes to get distracted with the intensity and the rigors of work on a daily basis.
yeah, you're not going to get these moments back. And as you know, it goes by really quickly. My niece just celebrated her 34th birthday, and I called her, and as I was wishing her a happy birthday, I was in the room when she was born. One of the biggest gifts I was ever given was to be present for that. But I looked at her and thought to myself, she's 34 years old. How in the world did that happen? So my reaction was to say to her, Jenna, you're 34. You got older. I didn't. I don't think I understand that. So, yeah. So tell us this. Tell us about a risky decision you had to make that paid off and what gave you the courage to act.
Oh, I think just this whole leap of faith, joining the Imperium network. The reality is there's nothing that's certain in life. And when we were considering the affiliation, there was no guarantees. It was really a relatively brand new notion and concept. We were early adopters of the model. So there was no guarantee that what we thought might be a benefit was going to actually come to fruition. What gave us confidence in doing that is we knew the alternative, of course, was that we were growing stagnant and we wouldn't be able to survive in the environment as the headwinds were building as it relates to funding. So just kind of doing an analysis on both sides of the ledger of what is ahead of us and thinking more strategically allowed us to take that leap of faith, but also recognizing that once that you've chosen that direction, that you actually can influence the outcome. It's not just you're a passenger on that bus. You're going to contribute to the speed and the direction and the route that bus is taking. And I think that's an important aspect. And that's something that I talk to boards and leaders about today as well, because invariably a lot of those boards that we speak to think that their mission is the most important mission, that they do things better than anybody else, and that if they chose to join a larger network, that in fact would be acquiescence or an acknowledgement of having lost. I tend to think of it differently, that it's a strategic decision and a new way of being and a new way of behaving that can help extend and advance the missions that they're pursuing. And I think if you can kind of cognitively reframe those things, it becomes a healthier choice for you moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. So, Jay, I look back at my career and I realize that um, I've made a few mistakes, but a few of those mistakes that I've made has led to my biggest success. Have you ever had a mistake that led to a big success that you didn't think that might have been the outcome?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm sure it's akin to what I always thought about in therapy when we did a great number of groups, group work when we were doing the work that we were doing, and there were moments where I thought I gave some real pearls of wisdom out in the group or to the individual, and then when we would conclude the therapeutic relationship, we always did these exit interviews where the clients would give us feedback, and invariably they would say to me, that time you said this really was the most important thing, and it was something I had forgot. It was a throwaway line. It didn't mean much to me, but it meant something to them. And I think there are circumstances in our lives where, again, the mistakes that we make, you can ultimately lead you down a better path. I think one of those mistakes that I made was not continuing my education to pursue my PsyD. I was pursuing my doctorate in psychology, but I found my plate too full when I was the president and CEO at Edison Court. This is back in 2010 or 2012, probably. And I decided to punt on pursuing that degree. Um, are there great things that occurred as a consequence? Sure. Look where we are today. Look at the number of lives we're supporting. Look at the number of employees that we have. Look at the impact that we're having as a consolidated entity. Those things are all very exciting. From a personal enrichment perspective, is that something I'd like to get back to sometime? For sure. And it is something that oftentimes occurs to me. I would love to be able to have that intellectual pursuit and the kind of the validation that a doctorate would give you. That would be something I'd like to get back to.
I love this story. I just had the pleasure of talking to a dear friend of mine who is 85 and is a physician and a leading physician in her career, has just moved into sort of an independent living situation, still in great health. But at 85, she just told me she just passed her medical boards that they have to do every 10 years. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, it keeps my brain sharp. And she said, besides, I learned I might be the oldest person to ever pass them. I'm definitely the oldest woman to ever pass them. So you seem to be like me. There's this desire to keep learning forever. And I know that I'm one of those people. In fact, I suspect on my last breath, I'm going to say, just a moment, I have a question. Tell me this, Jay. I'd love to know how you recognize fear as information and not a stop sign.
Yeah, I think fear is our body's reaction to the unknown and to feeling as if we're not in control. And I think one of the greatest lessons uh, that I guess somewhat an aphorism that's out there, or perhaps it's more of a poem that's out there that many of us know, is the Serenity Prayer, more applicable generally to recovery. But I think generalizably, it can be something we can all gain something from understanding, the difference between that which we control and which we don't control, and accepting that. And so really, I think fear sometimes or oftentimes is a response to not being certain of our ability to control where things are going. That's okay. We can't control everything. Let's focus on the aspects of our experience and environment that we can control and figure out how to pull those levers, because
Yeah.
that's what's going to help us find a better outcome moving forward.
I had this great experience, Jay, that my dad in his workroom, he could fix anything. He worked for the same construction company for 60 years. I
Wow.
come from humble beginnings, but in this workroom, he had two quotes on the wall. And I remember seeing them as a little kid. They used to make me mad as a little kid, and I understood them better as I got older. And one of them was the Serenity Prayer. Now, this man would be 103 if he were still alive. So that was a long, long time ago. The other was a quote that said, learn from the mistakes of others. You don't live long enough to make them all yourself. And what I once thought was a bit of an annoyance to me was turned out to be very wise words from my dad. So I love this idea of reframing these things. I've also learned that this fear idea, I even throw the good old imposter syndrome that we talk so much about are both simply opportunities of growth.
You just reminded me also of an early experience in my life that really has shaped me was with my mother. When I grew up in New Jersey, and I didn't come from a lot as well. I'm the oldest of five. I was 12 years old when I had my first job, albeit under the table because you're not allowed to have working papers in Jersey till you're 14. But I was a busboy at the Paramount Diner in Manasquan, New Jersey. And I remember getting up early the day of the first day of my employment there, and I was showering, and I kind of began to dawdle a bit. I didn't want to go. And my mom said, "What's wrong?" And I said, I'm worried, I'm nervous. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to go." And she said this, and it seems incredibly simplistic, but I swear I have said this to myself many times over my lifetime. There's a first time for everything. And for some reason that dumbed it down so it made it because she's right. And it's applicable to so many things. There's a first time for everything. There's a first time for a podcast that you facilitate. There's a first time for being on a podcast. There's a first time for going on a date. And all of those things can seem at times to be overwhelming, but guess what? We all have that experience. And that really normalized it for me. And I thank you for sharing your story about your dad, because that kind of evoked for me that
And,
memory with my mom. Yeah,
and aren't we grateful for every one of those first times?
absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. So tell me this, what impact are you most proud of? Not professionally, not publicly, but personally.
Oh, that's a great question too. I mean, there's no greater joy that I've had in my life than raising our son, and watching him grow. His name is Jack. He's the fifth. I'm the fourth. We continue that tradition. By the way, as a curious aside, this past weekend, my father's sister sadly passed away a couple weeks ago, and we went to help the family clean out their home. And there was a golf trophy in their home. My father's sister, my Aunt Jill, she had got this trophy from my dad's dad, my great grandfather, and he had won a golf tournament at a local golf club. And no, I had no idea that he was a golfer, but he was our namesake, right? He's John Howard Deppeler, and I'm now, of course, the fourth, and Jack, our son, is the fifth. And I just seeing, there's a certain kind of nostalgia that runs through that feelings of responsibility because I carry the family's name, and perhaps burdensome or not, I've given that to my son. But seeing him grow and seeing helping him develop and helping him overcome some of the challenges he faced. He was born with plagiocephaly and torticollis. And so has required certain interventions that my wife and I are blessed to be able to provide. And he's thriving through all those challenges. And, it's again, a kind of a reminder of the resilience we as human beings have, because he didn't just acquiesce and kind of laid out. Like, he takes those challenges and he overcomes them, and he sees them as opportunities to grow. Maybe he doesn't think that way, but I can see, kind of the spirit that he has. So if there's any experience in my life that I'm most proud of, and hope to continue to be so, it's that relationship with Jack.
Yeah, I love this. Tell me this, how do you define meaningful success beyond just metrics and milestones?
Yeah, knowing that you're having a positive impact on people's lives moving forward, and allowing them to develop their own sense of agency in life. This goes back to Don Tangora, the person you asked me about having an impact on me. You know, Don didn't want, and Don's goal was not just to have kids conform while they were with us in our care, but rather to adopt a different lens and perspective of the world, where they felt as if they could advocate for themselves, have agency in their lives, and make good, healthy choices moving forward. So if there's anything that we can do, I can do in my career that affords that opportunity, whether it be to institutions, agencies, and those agencies support, that would be, I think, the greatest uh, outcome for me, if looking back on a career, whenever it is over, I suspect it'll be quite like your father's, 60 years, not, in the next couple of years. That would give me great joy to see that people's lives have inexorably been changed for the better, not for the worse. That would be something that would
Yeah,
really make me feel as if we've done well.
amazing. Have you ever said no to growth because it wasn't aligned?
I don't believe so. Again, I said early on, my life has been filled with serendipity, and I mean, so I'm not one who believes in luck per se. I'm one who believes in like the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, or the recognition of opportunity and preparedness. So if there has been the opportunity for growth and I was able to acknowledge it or identify it, I don't think I've said no to it, which, by the way, may contradict with my earlier story of not pursuing my PsyD, but I don't particularly regret that. It's just, I think, a goal of mine that was put on pause because I also recognize I have finite capacity as a human being. I can't take it all on.
Yeah, it's part of life's wisdom. I've learned that good old life wisdom. Sometimes it's true. By the time you get it, there's not much time left to use it. But I think that's a big one, is especially for those of us that like to manage multiple things. That I had a coach, because being a coach, if you don't have a coach that has a coach, you got the wrong coach. But a coach said to me, I was expressing all the stuff I was doing. He looked at me and he said, I just have one word for you. I have no idea what it means, but your word is pruning. And I thought about it. I can't get it out of my mind. So it's been fun thinking about pruning in many parts of my life. I had the gardener come because my yard was completely out of control. And so I said, I need to get rid of all the dead stuff. And I went away on a trip and I came back and I realized I wasn't clear enough in all the stuff I'm trying to manage, because when I came back, there was nothing, literally nothing in the yard.
Oh my
Dead and new. And I guess there was a little language barrier. I don't know, but it was reminded me that the pruning became really, really clear to me that even in pruning, we need to be conscious, right?
Oh, that's a good
So
point.
tell me this, Jay, what's the biggest, boldest vision of what comes next?
I think you mean personally, professionally, both?
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. Great. Biggest, boldest vision. I think that our business will impact businesses internationally. I think we're going to go beyond the borders of the United States. I think there's a real opportunity to impact people internationally. I think our business will scale to $3 billion by the end of the fiscal year 2029. I think that the sky's the limit for us. I recognizing that there are real significant headwinds that are coming down the pike in our industry of health and human services. But I think that with those challenges comes opportunities, right? I think that's the essence of any SWOT analysis, where you see a threat. The threat may be an opportunity, in fact.
Yep. Yep.
And so remaining nimble and remaining bold and remaining optimistic, I think, are essential in forging the path ahead.
What does renewal look like for Jay beyond just the rest and a day off? What does renewal look like?
Finding diversions that I absolutely enjoy. Tennis is one of those things. I don't get to do it as often as I'd like to. In fact, tennis tonight was canceled because where I'm speaking to you from is going to be about 105 degrees, and we can't do that outside today. I love crossword puzzles. I love word puzzles. Those are great diversions for me in renewal. Spending time with my family, my wife, my son. Those are things I absolutely adore. I just got back from a 3-day work trip last night, and it was delightful to reunite with them. When I got back, they were both waiting for me, so we all took a swim together as well. So those are the things that just remembering, why do I do what I do? It's not only for those that we support in our business, but it's also for our family. And my wife sent a picture on Tuesday night, I think it was, while I was away. And my mother-in-law and her husband and my brothers-in-law and their significant others and my son and my wife, they were all swimming in our pool. And I went, that's why we do what we do, right? Like I love that the
Yes.
family gets together. I'm a big, I love being with family.
So tell me, what does legacy mean to you at this stage of life?
Yeah, I do think of that. I want, there are things I hope that people think of me when, whenever that time, whenever my time comes. Yeah, I want people to think of me as having been empathic. I want people to think of me as having been thoughtful, considerate, well intended. I'm sure I'll get things wrong. I always say to my wife, we're screwing our kid up in some way that we don't even understand right now, we'll be the topic of a therapy session somewhere down the line. And I assure you that's not our goal, but it's going to be an outcome. So I just, I hope my legacy is one that more good came of the work that I do, the interactions that I have, the relationships that I build, than bad. And if that balance sheet shakes out that way, I'll be happy. I really, yeah, as I said regarding our relationship with Jack, our son, I'm sure that same thing happens with other people, right? There are unintended consequences. I never intend to have a negative impact or effect on people. I'm sure I do, but I'm certainly hopeful that my intention to have a positive impact will be that which people remember and measure me by when my time comes.
Yes, yes. So tell me this, Jay, if a much, much, much younger Jay were listening to this recording of this podcast, what would you tell him?
Uh, Chill out, calm down, take a deep breath. Remember, like you said, you didn't come from a lot. I didn't come from a lot. And being the oldest of five kids, by the way, I feel a great deal of pressure. I felt a great deal of pressure not to screw up. I didn't, I'm 52. I didn't have a child until I was 46 for a reason. I felt, in many ways parentified to my four younger siblings. My father now lives in the same. We moved him to our town. He's going to be 83 this year. So I think I was very kind of uptight and balled up in my early youth. I think that probably is why I ended up in the chairs I ended up in some of my businesses of the businesses because that was that was just kind of my demeanor. But I could have chilled out a little bit and enjoyed a little bit more. I didn't need to be as uptight. So, I think that would be the major lesson I would try to impart upon myself. And one,
Hey.
by the way, I continue to try to embrace as we sit here today.
Funny how they don't fully go away and they keep coming back around.
Yes.
Yes, yes. If your journey could leave an invitation with the viewers today, what would that invitation be?
Please join me in trying to help make the world a better place. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do as an organization. It's what I'm trying to do as a human being. Every relationship, every interaction I have, I'd like again for people to walk away feeling good about it. So let's all try to understand one another, be empathic, be open, be sensitive, and leave the world a better place for those who come behind us.
Wonderful. Jay Deppeler, Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Development Officer at Imperium. Thank you for being on Opening Pathways today. Where can we find you?
You can find our website at www.imperium.org. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jay Deppeler. And those are the two primary locations you can find me.
Perfect. Jay, thanks for being on Opening Pathways today.
Oh, I really appreciate the opportunity. I love your insightful. By the way, you could have been a clinician with these questions that you asked. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. And to my viewers, this is Tom Lenoble. I'll see you next time.